My wife won a $9 million jackpot, and the first thing she did was file for divorce and kick me out of our house. Can you believe that? $9 million, and suddenly, I was nothing to her. But what she didn't know was that the prenup her own parents forced me to sign before marriage. Yeah, that was about to become her worst nightmare. Let me start from the beginning so you understand exactly how cold and calculated she was. I've been married to Jessica for almost 6 years. We met when I was working at a small car dealership and she walked in looking for a reliable SUV. I still remember how she flipped her hair and laughed at my stupid jokes about cup holders and seat warmers. She had this way of making me feel like the only man in the room, even though I later learned she made every guy feel like that. Back then, she worked in HR for a tech company and her parents were loaded, like old money loaded. Her dad owned 3 car washes, a property business, and her mom ran some boutique real estate consultancy. Honestly, I always felt a little out of place around them. They'd invite us for dinner, and everyone would sit there in silence eating steak with expensive wine, while I'd be gulping water because I didn't even know how to pronounce the name of half the food on the table. But Jessica made me feel like it didn't matter. She always said, "Don't worry, babe. My parents are just stuck up. I love you for you." So, when we got engaged, I thought it was the happiest day of my life. Until her parents pulled me aside and made me sign a prenup. Her dad literally said, "It's not personal. Just protection." At the time, I didn't care. I was so in love with Jessica that I would have signed anything to be with her. I remember thinking, I'll never need her money anyway. I'll build my own life. But turns out, that prenup wasn't protecting them from me. It was protecting me from her. Fast forward to last month. Jessica bought a Powerball ticket on a random Tuesday. I was in the kitchen making us spaghetti when she screamed from the living room. I ran in thinking something was wrong, and there she was, staring at the TV with her hands over her mouth, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I won! Oh my God, I won!" she kept repeating, shaking all over. At first, I was excited for her. I hugged her so tight I almost lifted her off the floor. I said, "Baby, this is amazing! We can finally pay off our mortgage, fix up the backyard, travel, invest, everything." But as soon as I said we, something in her eyes changed. She pulled away and just nodded, her face suddenly blank. I thought maybe she was in shock, you know? Like 9 million is life-changing. I tried to brush it off. I kissed her forehead, told her to sit down, and made her some tea to calm her nerves. But 2 days later, I came home to find all my clothes packed up in black trash bags on the front porch. There was a note taped to the door that said, "I'm filing for divorce. Don't contact me." That's it. After 6 years together, she just erased me. Like I was nothing but an old stain she couldn't scrub out of her perfect little life. I remember standing there, reading that note over and over, feeling like my heart was being ripped apart from the inside out. But then, something clicked in my mind. Something that made my tears dry up instantly. That prenup, yeah, the one her parents forced me to sign before they'd even let us get married? Well, turns out, Jessica didn't read it properly. Because what her parents were trying to protect was about to destroy her. And that is where everything changed. I stood there on the porch, staring at those black trash bags stuffed with my clothes. For a moment, I couldn't even move. My hands were shaking, my knees felt weak, and I kept thinking, this has to be a joke. She can't just throw me out like this. But it wasn't a joke. The divorce papers came the very next morning. She didn't even bother to hand them to me herself. A process server showed up at my motel door while I was still in my pajamas, handed me the envelope, and said, "Good luck, man." I guess even he could see how broken I looked. That entire day, I just sat on the edge of that stiff motel bed staring at the wall. My phone kept buzzing with friends asking what happened, if I was okay, if it was true. But I didn't have any words. I just kept replaying everything over and over in my head. Her smile the day we met. The way she used to leave little notes in my lunchbox when I worked long hours at the dealership. How she would curl up next to me on the couch after a bad day at work and bury her face in my chest like I was her safe place. And now? She kicked me out of my own home like I was trash. Like 6 years meant absolutely nothing to her. I didn't even have the energy to eat that day. I ordered food and let it sit there until it went cold. All I could think about was how she didn't even have the decency to tell me to my face. And for what? Money? Fame? The sudden attention from her friends and the news? Was all that worth throwing away our marriage? Then, later that evening, I forced myself to get up and take a shower. As I stood there letting the water run over my face, I remembered something. The prenup. At first, I didn't even know why it popped into my head. But it was like this tiny voice whispering, "Check it. Read it again." So after I dried off, I dug into my bag where I kept all my important documents. And there it was, folded neatly, the paper already yellowing around the edges. I sat down on the floor of that motel room and started reading every single line. My hands were trembling as I held the paper, my heart pounding harder with each paragraph. Because suddenly, something clicked. That prenup wasn't like most prenups. See, her parents never trusted her with money. They forced me to sign a contract that basically said I wouldn't go after their wealth or family assets if we ever divorced. But tucked away near the bottom, in tiny print that almost no one would bother reading, was a clause that said any independent winnings earned during the marriage would be considered joint marital assets unless filed separately before taxation and claim. I sat there, staring at that line for a good 10 minutes, feeling like the entire universe had just shifted under my feet. My chest tightened, my vision blurred, and this insane mix of pain, anger, and twisted relief rushed through me all at once. She thought she was so smart. That winning the lottery meant freedom from me, from everything we built together. But what she didn't realize was that because we were still married when she claimed those winnings, half of it legally belonged to me. And right then, a different kind of feeling rose inside me. Not just anger or betrayal, but something darker. A quiet determination that whispered she wanted to throw you out like garbage? Fine. But now, she's about to learn exactly what it feels like to lose everything she ever cared about. I picked up my phone, opened my contacts, and dialed the number for the one person I knew could turn this around completely, my lawyer. I didn't sleep at all that night. I just kept staring at the ceiling of that crappy motel room, listening to the hum of the old air conditioner, feeling my chest tighten every time I thought about Jessica's face when she kicked me out. By morning, my lawyer, Mr. Henson, called me back. He'd been my parents' lawyer for years, an older man with a calm voice that always made me feel like things were under control. He asked me to come to his office right away, so I drove over, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. When I sat down across from him, he was already flipping through a printed copy of the prenup I'd emailed him the night before. He looked up at me, adjusted his glasses, and said, "Son, did you read this properly before you signed it?" I shrugged, feeling embarrassed. "No, sir. Her dad just told me it was a standard prenup to protect their assets. I didn't care. I just wanted to marry her." He nodded slowly. "Well, her father might have thought he was protecting his daughter, but whoever drafted this document was protecting you without even knowing it." I blinked at him, confused. "What do you mean?" And that's when he told me something that made my entire world spin. "According to this clause here," he said, tapping his pen against a paragraph near the end, "any independent financial gains during the marriage are subject to equal distribution upon divorce, unless your wife filed for a legal financial separation before claiming her winnings." I felt my breath catch in my throat. "So, you're telling me half of her lottery winnings are legally mine, Mr. Henson leaned back in his chair, folded his hands, and gave me a little smile. "Exactly. And here's the kicker, she never filed any financial separation before claiming the ticket. She filed for divorce after she won. That means, by law, you're entitled to half, unless you choose to forfeit it. Which, in your situation, I highly doubt you will." I sat there in stunned silence. Half. $4.5 million. The same woman who tossed me out with my clothes in trash bags was about to lose half her winnings to the man she tried to erase. Suddenly, every emotion I'd been drowning in, pain, anger, betrayal, turned into a cold, sharp clarity. My entire body felt electric. I could feel my pulse pounding in my neck, my jaw tightening so hard it almost hurt. I thought about how she'd smiled in my face all these years while planning her escape the moment she had money. I thought about how she didn't even have the decency to tell me in person. How she made me feel worthless, like I was just some leech clinging to her success. But now she was about to know what it felt like to lose everything she thought was hers. Mr. Henson was still talking, explaining how we could file the claim, how it would go to court, how she'd probably tried to fight it but wouldn't stand a chance. But I wasn't even listening fully anymore. My mind was already spinning with something darker, something that went beyond just taking half the money. Because for the first time since she kicked me out, I felt powerful. I felt like I finally had control. And I knew money alone wouldn't teach her the lesson she deserved. No. I needed to do more than just take half her winnings. I needed to destroy the fantasy life she was already building in her mind. Make her feel the same humiliation and emptiness she made me feel. She wanted a clean break, to live as if I never existed. But now, I was going to become the nightmare she couldn't ignore. And as I left Mr. Henson's office that day, the July sun beating down on my face, I smiled for the first time in days. Because I knew exactly what my next move would be. But before I could even start my revenge, I was about to find out something about Jessica that would change everything I thought I knew about her, and push my plan even further than I ever imagined. As I walked out of Mr. Henson's office, my mind was spinning with 100 different thoughts. Half of her winnings were legally mine. That alone felt like victory. But deep down, I knew money wasn't enough. I didn't want just revenge. I wanted justice. I wanted her to feel what I felt when she left me standing on that porch, staring at trash bags full of my life. I went back to the motel and spent the entire night thinking. I lay on that stiff mattress staring at the ceiling fan creaking above me, my thoughts swirling like a storm. Around 3 a.m. I sat up, grabbed my notepad, and started writing down my plan. First, I called Mr. Henson in the morning and told him to file my claim on her winnings immediately. He warned me that she would probably try to contest it, but I didn't care. The law was on my side. Then, I did something I never imagined I would do. I reached out to her best friend, Carla. Carla and I were never close. In fact, she always treated me like I was beneath Jessica. But money changes people, and Carla was no different. When I offered to meet her for lunch and told her I was planning to file for half of Jessica's winnings, she suddenly became very interested. Over salads and iced tea, Carla told me everything. Things I didn't even ask to know. Apparently, Jessica had already quit her job and booked a 2-month luxury trip to Europe with a friend. When I asked who, Carla hesitated, then showed me a photo on her phone. My stomach twisted into knots. It was a guy from her office, some mid-level manager named Dean. I remembered meeting him once at a company Christmas party. He shook my hand while his eyes never left Jessica. Back then, I thought I was being paranoid. Turns out, I wasn't paranoid enough. I felt like the air had been punched out of my lungs. All those nights she came home late claiming she was working overtime, she wasn't working. She was planning her new life with him behind my back. But that only fueled my determination. Because now, I knew exactly how to break her. I didn't want to just take half her money. I wanted to destroy the fairy tales she thought she was building with Dean. The next day, I called my lawyer again and told him to subpoena her financial records, just to make sure she hadn't secretly moved the money to an account under Dean's name. She hadn't. It was still sitting in her checking account, waiting for taxes to be filed. Then I made my final move. I sent Jessica an email. I kept it simple. Jessica, I'm filing for my share of the lottery winnings under Clause 18 of our prenup. I'm also including emotional damages for abandonment. my lawyer will be in touch. Have fun on your Europe trip with Dean. I didn't even sign it with my name. I knew she'd see it pop up on her phone while sitting next to him on some overpriced rooftop bar, drinking champagne and imagining their new life together. I knew she'd feel the blood drain from her face when she read those words. And that image alone gave me a sense of peace I hadn't felt in weeks. That night, she called me 15 times. I didn't answer a single call. Her text started out angry. How dare you do this to me? Then turned desperate. Please, can we talk? I didn't mean for it to go this way. But I left her on read, each message showing my little gray scene checkmark with no reply. Meanwhile, Mr. Henson filed the claim. Within days, Jessica was served with court documents. Dean, of course, found out. Carla told me he flipped out, saying he wasn't ready for any legal drama or financial risk. Apparently, he told her. I signed up for a vacation and fun, not a lawsuit and half her money going to her husband. And just like that, her fantasy crumbled around her. Knowing that was more satisfying than any revenge plot I could have scripted. But I wasn't done yet. Because after everything she did to me, after throwing me away like I was nothing, there was still one final thing I needed to do. When I woke up the next morning, after sending her that email and ignoring all her desperate calls and messages, I felt calm. For the first time in weeks, my chest wasn't tight with anger or grief. I just felt free. But I still had one thing left to do. The court process moved fast because everything was so clear in the prenup. Within a month, my lawyer called me and said, "Congratulations, son. It's official. You're entitled to $4.5 million after taxes. She can't contest it." I sat there holding the phone to my ear, staring at the cracked tiles of my motel bathroom, and I felt tears sting my eyes. Not because I was happy about the money, though yeah, it would change my life forever, but because I realized I wasn't broken anymore. She didn't destroy me. She just forced me to rebuild myself into someone stronger. A week later, I asked Carla to meet for coffee. She came, looking curious as ever, and sat across from me swirling her iced latte. I slid a small manila envelope across the table to her. She raised an eyebrow and opened it. Inside was a printed photo. It was Jessica and Dean, sitting close together at a rooftop bar in Paris, drinking champagne, laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. Except this photo wasn't taken by me. It was taken by a private investigator I hired right after learning about their trip. Carla looked up at me, shocked. "Why are you showing me this?" I smiled. "Because I need you to do me a favor. Post this on Facebook. Tag both of them." She hesitated. "Why?" I leaned forward, staring straight into her eyes. "Because Jessica blocked me everywhere. I want her to see that I know exactly what she did. And I want Dean's family and friends back home to see what kind of man he really is." Carla smirked and nodded. "Done." That same evening, the photo went up with the caption, "Looks like the Jackpot honeymoon started early for these two." Within hours, their co-workers, friends, and even family members were commenting, shocked and disgusted. Dean's wife, yeah, turns out he was married too, found out through that post. His entire life exploded overnight. Jessica tried calling me again, this time from a blocked number. I answered. All I heard was her sobbing. "Please, why are you doing this to me? You already took half the money. Isn't that enough?" I stayed silent for a moment, letting her words hang heavy between us. Then I said quietly, "You didn't just take money from me, Jessica. You took my dignity, my home, my peace. I'm not doing this to punish you. I'm doing this to remind you that some people, no matter how broken you leave them, will always stand back up." She started saying something else, but I hung up. I blocked her number after that. There was nothing left to say. A month later, I moved into a small beachfront apartment 2 hours away. I bought a used truck, paid off my parents' mortgage, and invested the rest. I wake up every morning to the sound of waves crashing against the shore. I go for long runs on the sand at sunrise. I cook my own meals. I sit on my balcony at night listening to the ocean and thinking about everything that happened. Sometimes, I still feel angry when I remember how she treated me. But most days I just feel grateful. Because losing her showed me what I was capable of surviving. And winning against her taught me what I was capable of becoming. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that no matter how badly someone breaks you, you always have the choice to rebuild. To rise up stronger, wiser, and more dangerous than they ever imagined. So yeah, in the end, she thought she kicked me out of her life like trash. But what she didn't realize was that she set me free. And honestly, that's worth more than any $9 million jackpot.